Hi, everyone. This is Jillian with Court Junkie. Court Junkie is a true crime podcast that covers court cases and criminal trials using audio clips and interviews with people close to the cases. Court Junkie is available on Apple Podcasts and podcastone.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 240 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. How about you?
Doing great.
Yeah, it's good.
Got a good lineup for everybody this weekend.
We do.
On TCAT, we're headed to West Memphis, Arkansas, to talk about 15-year-old killer Ronald Ward. There's a lot going on in this case.
There is.
There's race involved, excluded evidence, overturned convictions, retrials. There's just a lot to this triple homicide.
Definitely a full episode.
Yeah, it's good. Make sure you check it out. Gibbs, let's go ahead and give our shout outs. For Patreon, we had Judy Huber.
Hey, Judy.
Alyssa Denham.
Hey, Alyssa.
Kels Bells.
What's up, Kels?
Kristen Bailey.
Hey, Kristen.
Vito Architetto.
What's up, Architetto?
Allie Vaughn.
Hey, Allie.
Darkness.
It's just dark. That's all it is, man. Just darkness everywhere.
Janet Lamb.
Hey, Janet.
Virgil First.
What's going on first?
Scout.
Good old Scout.
Jess the Vet Nurse.
I gotta love a vet nurse.
Karen M.
Hey, Karen.
Eve Delchamps Grimley.
It's like Delchamps so friendly.
Okay. I don't even know what that means, but let's go with it.
I just added some things to it and
I like
stirred
that.
it around.
I think you just said friendly, but
I think I probably did.
Stacy Roberto.
Hey, Roberto.
Nicole W.
Hey, Nicole.
Sally Kelly.
What's going on, Kelly?
And last but not least, Neo McPhee.
Man, Neo.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And then if we go back into the vault, Gibbs, this week we selected Ivory Koppel.
Ah, thanks, Ivory.
So we appreciate all the Patreon support, the new support, the continued support. We also had PayPal donations from Kimberly Silva.
Hey, Kimberly.
Sue Lewis.
What's going on, Sue?
And Lori McConaughey.
What's going on, McConaughey? All right.
All right. So thanks to all of you as well. Gibbs, you and I were talking about it before we started the recording. This is episode 240 of Unsolved. I think we're on 262 of True Crime All the Time.
Yeah.
That show, we just passed our 5-year anniversary.
We did.
You add that with our Patreon-only episodes, it's like 550 episodes. It doesn't even seem real.
It's a lot of murder.
It's a lot of murder. It's a lot of talking.
It is a lot.
I'll definitely tell you that. It's a lot of research. It's a lot of writing and a lot of talking.
The talking really gets me.
It's tough for you.
Yeah, it is.
Your voice is starting to go. I get it.
It is. Matter of fact, I got to take a drink of water.
You better. All right, buddy. Are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
Man, I am.
We're talking about the murder of Jeannette DePalma in September 1972. Jeannette's body was discovered laying out in the open atop a cliff in the wooded outskirts of Springfield Township in New Jersey. Jeannette, a high school student, had last been seen just over 6 weeks before when she left home to catch a train to a friend's house. The cause of death wasn't conclusive at the autopsy, but it was determined that Jeannette had likely been strangled. Law enforcement was stumped as to who may have been responsible. However, it didn't take long for local rumors to surface. Springfield residents started to speculate that Jeannette had met a gruesome end at the hands of Satanists and was a human sacrifice as part of a devil-worshipping ceremony. Thanks to the media for aiding and spreading this rumor, the case soon became synonymous with this line of inquiry to the detriment of other potential leads. This, of course, feeds into the concern about, something that you and I, Gibbs, have talked about many, many times, satanic panic, which was highly publicized and peaked in America in the 1980s. You couldn't turn on a television show without hearing something about satanic panic.
Yeah, it was always in the news. And I also remember when I was growing up, it was 1980 or 81, I was with some friends and we went down this road. It was called Snake Road. Very curvy road, obviously. Snake Road.
Is that where you think it got its name?
Yeah, maybe, yeah. But there was always these rumors that this one house was a home of, devil worshippers and
Satanists,
and and they had these Doberman pinchers just like they did in the movie. The little boy that could control the Dobermans.
The Omen,
that one, yeah.
Damien,
yeah,
Damien,
yeah, Damien. And
I'll fill in the blanks. This is kind of like a Mad Libs. You start talking, and then I'll fill in the blanks.
Yeah, you fill in the blanks for me. And so we would try to sneak up on the house. It was out in the country, but in woods.
Seems like a smart thing to do.
Yeah, we'd start walking down this long driveway, and then we hear some screams and stuff, and then we're like, you know what? We're out of here. And that's the story right there, man. So you're welcome.
So I think when you take this into account, along with the fact that a lot of the case file was said to have been destroyed during extreme weather, it's no surprise that Jeannette's case went cold. On top of that, key crime scene evidence went missing. There were allegations of a police cover-up. That was until some New Jersey-based authors and a private investigator pursued the case to see what they could uncover in an attempt to investigate alleged links to the occult and provide answers for Jeannette's surviving family.
So there's a lot going on there.
All right, buddy. So let's dive into the details of this case. 16-year-old Jeannette DePalma attended Jonathan Dayton High School in Springfield Township, New Jersey. Born on August 3rd, 1956 in Jersey City and the second youngest of 7 children, Jeannette lived in suburban Springfield with her parents, Salvatore and Florence. Her family was said to be very religious. They'd converted from Catholicism to become born-again Christians and were described by some Gibbs as, quote, Jesus freaks, which obviously was a derogatory term used to describe people in the 1960s and 70s who were aligned with the Christian movement. Their conversion involved the DePalma children leaving the Catholic school system to attend public schools instead. Some people described the family as strange. Now, Jeannette regularly attended the Assemblies of God Evangel Church in Elizabeth, New Jersey, with her family, where she participated in youth groups and volunteer outreach work. According to news website NJ.com, Jeannette had been in a brief relationship with the local pastor's son, but the romance ended around late July 1972. Jeannette was known to be a good friend, but someone who didn't necessarily seem happy-go-lucky. Those who knew her described her as an introverted but emotionally strong person who was intelligent and got good grades. She also loved listening to Janis Joplin.
Hey, some good music taste.
Yeah, very big back during that time frame. Some of her friends later said that despite attending church regularly, this seemed to be something Jeannette did simply to follow her parents' rules.
Sometimes you got to pacify the parents.
And do things that you really aren't into.
But it keeps your parents off your back.
Sure. According to Weird New Jersey magazine, Jeannette was also said to have had a part-time job at a clothing store in the nearby town of Summit. So I do want to go back a little bit, Gibbs. It's strange to me. This does seem like a religious family, but for people to, I guess describe them in such derogatory terms, that I just didn't understand. To me, there wasn't anything in the research that said that they were out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
As far as their religious beliefs, other than the fact that they switched from Catholicism to Christianity. I mean, okay, people do that. In August 1972, Jeannette enjoyed the last of her summer vacation before she was about to start her junior year. Her mother, Florence, later told the local Star-Ledger newspaper that when Jeannette graduated high school, she had plans to attend a Bible college in North Dakota. And I have to wonder, Gibbs, if that was something that was a real plan, or was that something she had told her parents, maybe as a way to pacify them or to make them feel good? Because, as we already said, there were friends who came out and said that she wasn't into the religion. She wasn't into church as much as I think her parents thought she was.
And I think we all have friends that told their parents that they were going to attend a certain university, but really never planned on attending that university. I know I had friends that would tell their parents, that, oh, yeah, I'm going to go to such and such university. But when it came down to it, they had no intention of going there.
No, sometimes you say things to make your parents happy.
Or to get them off your back.
That could be as well. On Monday, August 7th, Jeannette told her mother that she would walk the 3 miles into Summit, where she'd catch the train to a girlfriend's house in Berkeley Heights, 8 miles away. After visiting with her friend, she would then head off to her job that evening at the clothing store. Around 1:30 p.m., Jeannette left the family home on Clearview Road. But Gibbs, Jeannette had no intentions of catching the train. Instead, she planned to hitchhike, which many teens did at that time to get around, something you and I have discussed numerous times. It was a mode of transportation.
It just was what some people did to get around.
But Jeannette never made it to her friend's house, and she never showed up at her job, and she never made it back home. Her concerned parents soon reported her missing to Springfield police, but it was simply assumed from a law enforcement perspective that Jeannette had run away. Now, there was nothing to substantiate this theory, but this is something that we've seen time and time again, especially in cases back in the 1970s, even into the 80s. It seems to me like this was kind of the go-to response from law enforcement in many areas.
Yeah, it really did. Yeah, your kid must have ran away.
Don't worry, they'll come back. You know, obviously much different than what we think about reports of missing minors today.
Oh, I handled so much differently.
Absolutely. Jeannette hadn't taken any clothes with her besides what she was wearing. She did have her purse, but it was as though she just vanished. And Gibbs, I think, along with the fact that police often thought, kids had run away, the other thing that we see is that a lot of times they just didn't take any action on a missing person report until at least 24 hours had passed. Sometimes we've seen where it was even longer. We can't do anything until 48 hours or whatever it was, depending on the timing, the jurisdiction.
Which is unfortunate.
It is unfortunate. And obviously, if you could go back, it's something you would change, because we all know that time is of the essence in situations like these. So to have a policy that says we're not going to spring into action until at least 24 hours, you are really giving up some valuable time.
You really are.
Now, were there cases where kids returned?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. But even if it was 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10, is it worth it? And I think we would all say no. And obviously that's why things have changed over time.
Yeah.
But there's no question that valuable time was lost when it came to Jeannette's disappearance. Around 6 weeks later, on September 19th, the superintendent of an apartment complex on Wilson Road in Springfield made a grisly discovery. A dog belonging to one of the residents had carried a severely decomposed right human forearm and hand back to the complex dropping it on the grass outside.
And there's something you're not going to see every day.
Well, if you are seeing that every day, you're living in the wrong place and you need to look for new accommodations.
Really quickly.
Now, we know dogs, they'll go out and find things and bring them back. Cats will too. I never saw anything in the reporting about, the first person to actually see what the dog had brought back. But imagine that, right? You live in the complex. Maybe you're out taking a stroll. Maybe you're out taking your dog for a walk. And you see, just out in the middle of, a grassy area, a human forearm and a hand. Probably not too hard to figure out what you're looking at. Now, you might think it's part of a mannequin. You might think it's not human, but it's gruesome stuff.
Hey, our listeners are so good. I'm sure they'd start roping the area off.
Well, and see, that's the difference. I think, when you have a true crime fascination, your mind probably swings the other way. You're not thinking it's a mannequin. You're automatically thinking these are human body parts.
Yeah.
And this is the key to a murder investigation.
And you spring into action.
And on top of that, our listeners are just super smart.
They really are.
The Daily News reported that police and other residents searched the surrounding wooded area to find where the arm had possibly come from. The apartment complex was situated about 1,000 yards away from a 120-acre crystal and gravel quarry off Shunpike Road. It was called the Hoodale Quarry. Nearby was another wooded area called the Watchung Reservation. The Star Ledger reported that searchers discovered that evening a body on top of a 40-foot cliff known as the Devil's Teeth. It was within the bounds of the quarry, about 400 yards from the road. It was clear that the partially skeletonized remains had been there for some time. The body lay face down in some undergrowth with the left arm tucked under the head. And obviously, as we've talked about, the right arm was missing. Due to the level of decomposition and the extensive amount of animal activity, it was impossible to tell who it might be or how they might have died. The body was clothed in tan-colored pants, a navy blue shirt, and sandals, the same exact clothing that Jeannette wore when she'd left her home 6 weeks earlier. According to police reports at the time, a woman's pocketbook lay on the ground nearby, along with a pile of items that appeared to be dumped out of the bag. These consisted of a blue plastic comb, an inhaler, a glass vial containing an unknown substance, makeup, an eyeshadow compact, a small packet of tissues, and a key. But there was no sign of anything possibly resembling a murder weapon in the vicinity. The only thing Jeannette had been wearing which was missing was a gold necklace and a crucifix. It was difficult for any type of autopsy to be formed on the remains. The medical examiner really had to rely on dental records to confirm Jeannette's identity. The Courier News reported that despite x-rays being performed, there was no sign that Jeannette had any broken bones. She hadn't been shot, stabbed, or sustained any other type of traumatic injury to her bones. Like many teens, Jeannette experimented from time to time with marijuana, but there was no trace of any drugs in her remains whatsoever. Something the medical examiner did find was a high amount of lead present in Jeannette's system, but we mentioned it, right? Her body was severely decomposed. The Star Ledger noted that Jeannette's death actually wasn't ruled a homicide. Instead, the manner of death was recorded as undetermined. But we've already said, Gibbs, in the beginning, the cause of death was estimated to be strangulation. But there wasn't anything in the research to indicate how the medical examiner arrived at that conclusion. And obviously, that was not put on the death certificate. But even so, the county prosecutor decided the case was a matter of an unsolved homicide. So obviously police had to figure out exactly what happened to Jeannette. They also had to figure out how her body ended up on the top of a cliff. And one of the big things in this case, Gibbs, is the extensive amount of conflicting information that came out during the investigation. According to the Elizabeth Daily Journal, when Jeannette's body was found, there appeared to be a strange rock placement around her body, most notably around her head, where small rocks had been placed in almost like a halo formation. Various pieces of wood and branches were also said to have been placed around her body in an unusual manner. And arrow symbols were carved into the trunks of nearby trees. One account mentioned that some wood had been arranged in the shape of a crucifix above Jeannette's head. Another stated that lots of smaller crucifixes fashioned out of wood lay around her body. Surrounding these smaller crucifixes and framing Jeannette's body were large logs, which some witnesses claimed symbolized a coffin of sorts. So a lot of stories.
Yeah. We got a lot of things going on here, right? We got rock formations, stick and log formations.
And the fact that a lot of people thought they symbolized something.
Right.
The stories became even more macabre. Reports soon emerged of dead animals found hanging in trees in the Watchung Reservation nearby. There were reports of dead birds with snapped necks, lit candles on the ground, and bowls containing animal blood. So now we got a whole lot going on.
We do.
And I think everybody can see where this is headed, the satanic angle. You hear all these stories, and you're like, okay, there are people out in these woods on this reservation practicing witchcraft, some type of satanic rituals. We don't know exactly what is going on, but there's dead animals, there's bowls with blood, there's candles.
And we have a dead 16-year-old girl. That's some spooky stuff.
All right, Gibbs, let's take a break to talk about Talkspace. Folks, let's face it. A lot of us have fears about seeking help regarding our mental health. Fear of opening up to a stranger, thinking that people will judge you or treat you differently. But it doesn't have to be that way. Meeting with a therapist to work on your mental health is just as helpful as hiring a personal trainer to work on your physical health. And the positive impact can be just as life-changing. And Talkspace makes it easy. They make it a convenient, stigma-free experience. So you get all the benefits of traditional therapy without the hassle of setting up appointments, sitting in a waiting room, or having to wait an entire week between conversations with your therapist. At Talkspace, your privacy and security are their number one priority. You can send messages 24/7 and get replies throughout the day. Whether you struggle with anxiety, depression, self-doubt, or anything else, Talkspace gives you access to the help you need to move forward. So join Talkspace today and start moving forward with a single message. Just visit Talkspace.com and get $100 off your first month when you use our promo code TCAT at signup. That's $100 off at Talkspace.com, promo code TCAT. Hey, if you're a fan of romantic movies and love films with beautiful cinematography, then you're going to love Redeeming Love in theaters January 2022. Based on the international best-selling novel by Francine Rivers. The movie takes place during the California Gold Rush of 1850 and follows the life of Angel, who was the most notoriously sought-after woman in the Sierra Nevada foothills town of Paradise. Right as she was about to give up on finding freedom, Angel meets Michael and encounters a love that's unlike anything she's ever experienced. But shame of her past causes Angel to run away from the very thing that she's always wanted. As Michael sets out to find her, Angel discovers there is no brokenness that love can't heal. Redeeming Love, featuring Abigail Cowan, Tom Lewis, Nina Dobrev, Eric Dane, and Famke Janssen, is rated PG-13 and premieres January 21st in theaters nationwide. So bring a friend or even your significant other to see Redeeming Love. For more information or to find tickets to a theater near you, visit redeeminglovemovie.com. That's redeeminglovemovie.com. When news broke that Jeannette's body had been found, Gibbs, the rumors immediately began circulating that she'd been murdered by Satanists or, some type of coven of witches during an occult ritual. Now, I think if you heard that on the news today, you would say, okay, that sounds pretty far-fetched. And it would probably be one of the last scenarios you would think of when someone disappears and then turns up murdered. But not in the 1970s.
No.
In the late 1960s and early 70s, I think, it began, right? This wave of kind of moral panic relating to Satanism. And there were some reasons for this. You had the Tate LaBianca murders, the Manson family. You also had films like Rosemary's Baby, The Exorcist. So obviously these were national things, right? National cases, national films. And then local to the area, it hadn't even been 12 months since New Jersey man John List had killed his wife, 3 children, and his mother, leaving them inside the family's home in Westfield, which was just about 4 miles from Springfield, New Jersey. List went on the run for the next 17 years before he was captured in 1989 in Colorado. A few weeks after Jeannette's body was found, the Daily News quoted the DePalma's local pastor, Reverend James Tate. He speculated Jeannette had been abducted by Satanists and killed at a well-known local party spot because she had tried to speak to them about Jesus. He was quick to qualify that he was pretty sure Jeannette hadn't voluntarily participated in any rituals or practices on her own, but this contradicted other statements the Reverend made, where he implied Jeannette was part of a group of local teens engaging in witchcraft. And then you had Jeannette's parents, who seemed convinced their daughter went to school with people involved in devil worshiping. Now, there was nothing in Jeannette's behavior to indicate that she'd ever been involved with drugs or, any other type of undesirable influences. The Courier News reported in early October 1972 that investigators were said to have brought a self-proclaimed witch to the crime scene. Jeannette's parents were horrified when they found out. Basically, Gibbs, their daughter's tragic death, was becoming a media spectacle.
Yeah, I'm sure the parents are going, what in the world is going on here?
One thing investigators were sure of was that by the time she was at the Devil's Teeth, Jeannette couldn't have been on her own. She was wearing sandals, not hiking boots or other sturdy footwear. So to their minds, it would have been impossible for her to scale the cliff and surrounding steep terrain by herself. One of the difficult things was that there seemed to be a distinct lack of witnesses who could have seen Jeannette, depending on how quickly she'd arrived at the quarry after leaving home. No one came forward with anything of substance. According to the book Death on the Devil's Teeth, The Strange Murder That Shocked Suburban New Jersey, by writers Mark Moran and Jesse Pollock, police interviewed 2 potential witnesses who were likely to have been in the vicinity of the quarry at the time. One was a quarry guard named Tommy Rillo. The other was a local homeless man named Red Keir, who lived on a makeshift campsite near the reservation and caddied at the nearby golf club. But investigators soon eliminated both men as potential suspects, but we don't know exactly why. There was nothing in the reporting that gave the reasons why police eliminated them. Union County locals continued to fixate on the human sacrifice angle as the reason behind Jeannette's death. There was a lot of gossip around the town about teens conducting animal sacrifices and holding seances in the woods. The Courier News reported that Jeannette's clothing, hairs from her body in a bedroom dresser, and a soil sample from the crime scene were sent to the FBI for further forensic testing. In early 1973, the analysis results came back, but unfortunately, they didn't offer any additional clues. Jeannette hadn't been poisoned, and there was no hair belonging to anyone except her on her clothing. One intriguing detail was the presence of stains on Jeannette's underwear, bra, pants, and shirt. Unfortunately, though, these samples of unknown origin were determined to be too decomposed for further blood and semen analysis. And to me, Gibbs, these types of details, they're always tough, right? Okay, you got these hairs. Well, great. We're going to figure something out. Well, all we figured out is that all the hairs belong to Jeannette. We've got these stains on her underwear and bra, other pieces of clothing.
But we don't know what they are.
Well, we don't know what they are. And police figure out that they just don't have enough to really do any type of analysis on. That had to be very disheartening for them. And not surprisingly, it wasn't long before the investigation stalled. And really, they didn't have a lot to go on. There wasn't much information. They didn't have a lot of evidence. And the evidence they had didn't lead to anything. Jeannette's family and closest friends remained devastated without answers. Her case really became kind of a local legend and a cautionary tale for the general public. But then we jump forward quite a bit to 1997, 25 years after Jeannette's murder. We've already talked about writers Mark Moran and Jesse Pollack. Mark was the Weird New Jersey magazine editor, which published an article on Jeannette's unsolved murder. According to the Daily News, this article prompted a flood of anonymous letters from people with a bunch of interesting theories about who was responsible for Jeannette's death. And some of these theories insisted that occult activity was a factor. The magazine published another article on Jeannette's murder in 2003, and the anonymous correspondence continued to come in. Mark had strong suspicions there was more to the story than perhaps had been initially covered by the media, and he investigated the case behind the scenes with Jesse Pollack. What they uncovered led to a range of new theories and suspects in the case as set out in their book, which was published in 2015. According to law enforcement, one of the most disappointing details that Mark and Jesse discovered was that Jeannette's case file was destroyed in 1999 during the flooding of a Springfield Police Department evidence room following Hurricane Floyd. According to the New York Post, Mark tried contacting locals who had been around when Jeannette disappeared, but it quickly became apparent that it was tough getting people to talk. Those who did often wanted to stay anonymous. And I think, Gibbs, they found the fact that people were reluctant to talk after so many years had passed as a little bizarre.
Well, it is strange that there's not that many people that want to talk about the events that happened back then. Why wouldn't you want to have those discussions and tell these people what you know?
At the same time, a private investigator named Edward Salzano also became interested in the case after speaking with Jeannette's nephews. He also concluded that something fishy went on with the management of Jeannette's case by local law enforcement and the county prosecutor's office. Further credibility was lent to this theory when Mark and Jesse were informed of a shocking but pleasantly surprising revelation. It turns out that Jeannette's case file hadn't been destroyed during the flooding at all. So this was great news, Gibbs, because this was one of the kind of big hurdles.
Sure was.
That they encountered. Okay, the case file has been destroyed. Now they find out that no, it hasn't. So I think one of the questions they had was this some type of mistake, or was there something more to it? Was this some type of cover up by law enforcement?
Yeah, where's it been all this time?
Yeah, I mean, the problem is it's hard to know, right? Whether this was a genuine error on behalf of the police or whether someone within law enforcement tried to intentionally mislead them because they didn't want them looking into the case any further. The pair were eventually provided with the file in February 2021, including crime scene photos in response to their 2019 FOIA request. Police documents revealed that the physical forensic evidence collected in Jeannette's case was noted on an inventory and repackaged in September 2012. But there was no reason given as to why this evidence was repackaged 40 years after the murder. The evidence included the contents of Jeannette's pocketbook, bottles of cosmetics from her bedroom, a plastic book cover, a plastic bag containing Jeannette's sandals, and a specimen jar containing the scrapings from underneath her right hand fingernails. But there was nothing to suggest what had happened to her clothing, which had previously been sent to the FBI for forensic testing. I think one of the things that was missing here, Gibbs, was Jeannette's pocketbook. Right? We mentioned the contents were there,
right,
but the pocketbook itself was not.
So what happened to that?
Well, according to the case file, Jeannette's pocketbook wasn't recovered from the crime scene at all. And this was a direct contradiction to what was said in the, beginning stages of the investigation. Much like her gold crucifix necklace, no one knows where it is. And I think what most people believe is that the killer most likely took both of these items, possibly as trophies.
Yeah, certainly a good possibility.
All right, Gibbs, let's take our last break to talk about AirMed Care Network. In every one of these unsolved episodes, we talk about a number of unforeseen scenarios. And as everyone knows, the unexpected does happen. Well, if a medical emergency arises, an AirMed Care Network membership protects your family and your finances. AirMed Care Network crews provide air medical transport to the nearest and most appropriate trauma center. And as a member, you'll never see a bill for that flight. That's right, members never pay a dime for transport when flown by an AMCN provider. Health insurance may not cover the full cost of emergency medical air transport, so this is a very important membership to have. It covers everyone in your household for just pennies a day. And right now, True Crime All the Time Unsolved listeners get up to a $50 Amazon or Visa e-gift card when you join. So be prepared with an AirMed Care Network membership. Visit airmedcarenetwork.com/true and use the offer code TRUE. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. We've been a big advocate of BetterHelp for a long time on this show. This month, we're discussing some of the stigmas around mental health. I think there are people who think you should wait until things are unbearable to go to therapy, but that's not true. Therapy is a tool to utilize before things get worse, and it can help you avoid those lows. We've also been taught throughout the years that mental health shouldn't be a part of normal life. That's wrong too. We take care of our bodies by going to the gym, the doctor, and nutrition. There's no doubt we should be focusing on our minds just as much. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can be matched with a therapist in under 48 hours. Give it a try and see why over 2 million people have used BetterHelp Online Therapy. And True Crime All the Time Unsolved listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/all-the-time. That's betterhelp.com/all-the-time. That's betterhelp.com/all-the-time. So Gibbs, one of the things that jumps out at me about this case is there are some things that are known. Now, there are also some things that were known, back in 1972, 73 that later turned out to be correct. But there are a lot of questions that have just not been answered. Now I think it's time to look at the theories and suspects, some which are old, some which are a little newer. There's the theory that Jeannette was dabbling in drugs and had an overdose. This is a theory which some police officers initially believed, but we talked about it. There was no trace of drugs found in her system. There was no sign of any type of drug paraphernalia near her body. There's really nothing to suggest that she died by suicide or that some type of accident occurred either. So I think this is the reason that the county prosecutor came to the conclusion and recorded the death as an unsolved homicide. So a drug overdose, whether accidental or intentional, was ruled out. We still don't have an explanation for the high lead content in Jeannette's body. So that is a real mystery, I think, to this day. So next, Gibbs, let's talk about the theories of what could have possibly happened to Jeannette. I think first off, you have to talk about Jeannette running into a single predator or a group of predators on her way to her friend's house. That's a definite possibility.
Well, look, when you're hitchhiking 8 miles or so, who knows who you're going to run into?
Yeah, it could have been that the person she accepted a ride from decided to do her harm.
Yeah.
That's a distinct possibility. And obviously, you have to look at the theory that a group involved in Satanism had something to do with her death. That's been a big rumor, ever since she died. As far as the Springfield PD is concerned, they could never substantiate this, despite the public opinion, the media speculation. I think the most compelling evidence rejecting the satanic ritual theory comes in the form of the crime scene photos. There appear to be no specific satanic symbols anywhere near Jeannette's body. When Mark Moran and Jesse Pollock looked at the photos, they noted what others had described as crucifixes and the halo of stones around Jeannette's head simply weren't there. The logs near Jeannette's body also appeared to have fallen there, as opposed to being dragged to the area to construct any, type of specific formation.
Well, that certainly contradicts a lot of the things said.
Oh, absolutely. And we talked about some of these early on as having come from eyewitness statements. So, okay, did they really? Or did people say things that they thought they saw or they imagined? I don't know.
Or do they want it to just instill some fear?
I really can't answer that, but it's pretty hard to argue with the crime scene photos.
Yeah, I mean, that speaks volumes.
Right. If it's not there, it's not there.
It seems like it was a 16-year-old girl who was killed or placed in this overgrown brush.
Yeah, well, you make a good point. I don't know, Gibbs, that there was evidence that conclusively said she was killed at that spot, or whether she could have been killed in another area and then placed there. If there was, I didn't see it in the research.
But all this time, until these photos resurfaced, a lot of folks were thinking that this was related to the occult because of the stones and
the crucifixes.
Yes.
And I mean, when we talked about it, the first thing that jumped into my head was the first season of True Detective. With each body that was found, there was some sort of little bundle, right, that was found with the body that suggested it was something to do with the occult. It's kind of one of the things that ran through my mind.
Yeah.
It wasn't stacked up stones or anything like that, but it's just so strange to me that you would have eyewitness statements saying, it looked as though there was a halo of piled up rocks around this victim's head. And then, the crime scene photos surface and there's nothing there.
The only thing that could be the answer to that would be that the police would have to pick up all the stones and sticks and throw them away or get them away from the photo area and take the photos as if they were never there.
Well, and let's not discount that. I mean, it is a possibility. I have no idea why they would do that. It's another mystery to this case. And then I think we have to consider whether Jeannette fell victim to a serial killer. New Jersey residents were familiar with sadistic murders of teen girls that occurred throughout the state in both the years just before and not long after Jeannette was killed. The problem is there's no consistent MO linking these cases So I think based on that, Gibbs, police have said that there's really no evidence, right, to suspect that she was the victim of a serial killer. Doesn't mean that she couldn't have been the victim of a lone killer. Just maybe not the person who was killing all of these other girls in New Jersey.
Yeah, I agree with you. It could absolutely be that. Or it could have been another serial killer that wasn't related to any of those.
Yeah, we know serial killers overlap. Multiple serial killers often operate in the same area. So many different options.
Yeah, she could have been hitchhiking and got picked up by anybody, right? A serial killer. She could have been that killer's 10th victim, as far as we know.
When it comes to specific individual suspects, though, the real breakthroughs were made not by law enforcement, but by Mark Moran and Jesse Pollack. In their book, Mark and Jesse explored other possibilities that haven't been discussed much in the public until recent years. We've already mentioned the quarry guard Tommy and the homeless man named Red who camped at the quarry. But through Mark and Jesse's research and interviews with Springfield locals, including Jeannette's friends and family, more questions have been raised as to her last movements. There's the possibility she could have taken a detour to a neighbor's house where she could have died, perhaps during a party that some people said was happening that afternoon. The problem I have with this one, Gibbs, is then you have to answer the question of how she ended up where she was ultimately found.
Yeah, I think you have to theorize that she died at this party, and to cover it up, they had to take her up to where she was found and make it look like a murder.
And so then, you're saying they, meaning everyone at this party. So then you're talking multiple people covering something up. And as we've talked about before, the more that people know about something, the greater the chance that something about it is going to come out over the years. And it's been many years since this happened. So that one is hard for me.
It is, but, we talked about how 25 years later, they went and questioned people in the town again, and everybody was kind of
reticent to talk.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Okay. We got to throw everything out there.
Sure.
Mark and Jesse also wrote about a local young man who could potentially be linked to the sighting of a red Ford Falcon or a similar vehicle. In their book, they detail how in the weeks after Jeannette disappeared, but before her body was found, a red-colored vehicle was seen parked at the bottom of the hill leading to the cliff in the quarry. The man who owned such a vehicle was identified by several people as someone who had a crush on Jeannette and who knew the local area well. She was said to have hitched rides with him in the past, but she didn't reciprocate his feelings. The man's peers found him to be an unusual person, and a lot of people said that he gave off some type of strange vibe. The man has since died, so he can't be questioned, but some people wonder whether Jeannette hitched a ride with him to her friend's place only to become a victim of a crime of opportunity along the way.
Well, it is strange that he's given her some rides in the past and that he was enamored with her and she didn't reciprocate that. Maybe he killed her and then he sits down in his vehicle at the entrance to the quarry. What, to remember what he might have done?
I don't know. I don't put anything past these killers. Let's say if it was this person, which we have no idea, we have seen in the past, killers go back to crime scenes because they get, something out of it, whether it's a rush or sexual gratification or whatever it is. To be honest with you, something like this, whether it's this exact person that they're talking about or not, is much more likely to me than any of the satanic or occult type stuff that was rumored throughout the years.
Right.
Hitching a ride, whether it was someone she knew or not, and that person deciding in that moment that she was going to become their victim. That's extremely plausible in my book.
I agree with you.
Many within Jeannette's family wouldn't live to see a resolution to the case or the breakthroughs of recent years. Her father, Salvatore, died in 1980, only 8 years after Jeannette. Jeannette's mother, Florence, died in 2008. According to the Courier News, in June 2019, the same year Mark and Jesse applied to access Jeannette's case file, the private investigator filed a suit against the Union County Prosecutor's Office. He wanted Jeannette's missing clothing to be tested for any possible traces of DNA. He was to be disappointed, though, when the court denied the request 3 months later. While there's no further forensic evidence available, authorities conclusively say Jeannette wasn't a victim of any sort of ritual involving witchcraft or Satanism. This is not a lot of comfort, Gibbs, for her surviving family, who, according to social media, are said to have since fallen out with the private investigator as recently as 2021. If you have any information on the murder of Jeannette DePalma, you can contact the Union County Prosecutor's Office in New Jersey at 908-527-4500. So that's it, Gibbs, for our episode on the murder of Jeannette DePalma. You know, it's an interesting one. You have the angle of satanic panic. And I think for many, many years, a lot of people thought that she was the victim of, something involving that. I think now it's pretty widely thought, and police have even come out and said that they don't believe she was the victim of, anything to do with any of that type of stuff. So then it goes back to, a few of the different options, theories that we laid out. Could it be something else we haven't thought about? Sure. But I think we covered the more plausible theories as to who her killer may be. No, we don't have names. We don't know exactly, but the type or how it may have occurred.
Yeah, I kind of focus in a little bit on the driver of the red car. I'd like to know more about that.
Yeah, I would too. I think there could have been something there. If not, then I'm really kind of going more towards whoever picked her up.
Right.
Whether it was the man in the red car or another person as being her killer.
Yeah.
We got some voicemails. You want to check those out?
Let's hear them.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. This is Aaron again from Sacramento. I just wanted to reach out and give a call after hearing the Velasca, I don't know if I'm saying that right, the axe murder case that you guys just did on Unsolved. And you mentioned the book, The Man from the Train. That whole time period was so weird, that 25-year span. Like you guys mentioned, there was so many axe murders over the country in that time span. And I don't know if I agree with, with the author. It's a good read, but, I think it's more than maybe one train hobo. It might have been, 2 or 3 all during that time. But what's interesting, I don't know if you guys caught this in the book or in the details, but what do you call it? The German axe murders, the Hinterkaifeck murders. I don't know if I'm saying that right either. I'm sorry. That happened in 1922. I know you guys covered that, either criminology or Unsolved, maybe both. But that is also mentioned in the book, and it just goes back to that Paul Mueller and whatnot. So that whole time span, that 25 years, and all the axe killings is just a really weird time, and it's just fascinating. All those crimes never got solved, and it's just really bizarre. But anyways, just wanted to leave you guys with that. And anyways, thanks for all you do. Keep doing your thing and keep your own time ticking. All right, guys, thank you.
Brutal and bizarre for real.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Now, I don't remember what we said about it. If we said we thought that all of those murders were committed by one person, I don't remember us saying that. If we did, I don't believe that, because I don't see how anybody could. But
right, and we did cover that case.
Yeah, the Hinterkaifeck murders, and he did say it correctly. But we appreciate you calling in for sure.
You them. Hey, Gibby, who's got a crappy football team now? You them beat Ohio State.
I didn't hear what.
You didn't hear what? So, I went back and forth. Should I play it? Should I not play it? And I ultimately decided that, I'm going to play it.
Yeah.
And take ownership of it. It was a tough loss.
It was.
But I will say this. It wasn't a squeaker. We didn't get, hosed by bad officiating. Michigan they just took it to us, man. Yeah. We just couldn't stop them. They ran down our throats. It was a rough game, but props to them. What cracks me up though is it just shows you the rivalry.
Sure.
That somebody is willing to call and leave that voicemail. It shows you how intense this rivalry really is.
Yeah.
It's not made up.
He's been waiting 10 years to say that.
He has been waiting a long time. Oh, but no, we appreciate it.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. My name is Sandra. I live in the Chicago area. I was just listening. I've always listened to your podcast. I just recently, as of today, started listening to your Unsolved podcast because my sister recommended it. I was just listening to your Chicago Strangler episode, and I don't know if this is a lead or anything, but when I was younger, probably 5, 6 years old, I was living in Arlington Heights, and I had a man stop me and try to take me. He pulled up in the driveway and tried to take me, and not so great of a description. He looked like Howard Stern, for less of a better description. And then again, when I was 21, about 8 years ago, the same man, I'm almost positive, stopped me again in DeKalb, Illinois. And the reason I think he's the same man is he has the same sunglasses and black, curly, long hair. So I don't know if it is a lead or anything, but I've lived in, the Chicago area for the last 30 years. So I thought, if that could help anybody, I would let you guys know. So, yeah, I love you both. Mike and Gibby, I'm equally a fan of both of you guys. Making that all the time. I listen to you guys constantly. Keep your own time, chicken. Bye.
We never know. What I will say, Gibbs, is that he looks like Howard Stern is very descriptive.
It is.
Howard has a very unique look. And I don't know that there's that many people who really look like him. I mean, I'm sure there's imitators. There's people that probably, have made themselves look like him to do appearances or parties or whatever. But he does have a very distinctive look. So,
but if you're in that area and you see Howard Stern driving a van,
call the police.
Yeah.
No. Hopefully it's not the real Howard Stern. All right, buddy. That is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.